Aunt Claire, aren't you embarrassed to be mooching off Grandma and Grandpa at your age? This should be our house. Chloe's voice cut through the morning calm like a knife. I looked up from the garden, my temper flaring. Chloe, with her smug 15-year-old face, stood at the patio door, clutching her phone like it was a weapon. I took a deep breath, remembering that she was just a kid, but the venom in her words stung. Chloe, I think you've misunderstood something, I said as calmly as I could manage. I'm here to help your grandparents, not to take anything from them. Her eyes rolled dramatically. Yeah, sure, that's what Mom says too. I turned back to my work, trying to tune out the negativity. I couldn't figure out what had changed in the years I was gone. How did my sweet niece become so spiteful? And why were Eric and Susan fueling this hostility? The screen door creaked open, and my mother, Linda, came out carrying a tray of lemonade. Everything all right, honey? She asked, casting a cautious glance in Chloe's direction. Just a little misunderstanding, I replied, standing up to take a glass. Where's Dad? He's inside fixing the sink, she said, her eyes softening with worry. Eric's family should be here soon. You know how he gets if things aren't perfect. Perfectly unreasonable, I muttered under my breath. Mom's face fell for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. Well, let's get ready. You know he means well. I knew he didn't. Eric and his family arrived every Sunday like clockwork, turning our home into a battleground. The car's tires screeched on the gravel, and within seconds the front door banged open. Eric's voice boomed through the house. Why is there dirt on the floor? Can't anyone keep this place clean? I tensed, feeling the all-too-familiar knot of frustration in my stomach. Eric stormed into the kitchen, Susan right behind him. Claire, did you forget to clean? Or are you just too lazy? He sneered. I met his gaze, my voice steady. I was in the garden. The house is fine. It's far from fine. I'm embarrassed to bring Susan and Chloe here, Eric spat, grabbing the lemonade from the tray with a scowl. Susan smirked, looking down her nose at me. Just try to do better, all right? We have standards. Chloe sauntered past, purposely knocking over a stack of books on her way to the living room. Oops! I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. My parents appeared behind me, Dad's wrench still in hand. We invited you for a family dinner, not to criticize us. Eric rolled his eyes. Dad, come on. We're just trying to help Claire improve. I took a deep breath, each word a struggle. I'm here to support Mom and Dad, not to be insulted in my own home. Susan's laugh grated on my nerves. Your home? Funny, Claire. Last I checked, it's our family home. My parents exchanged a weary look. The tension was palpable. How did it come to this? Every visit felt like a never-ending ordeal, filled with disrespect and entitlement. But standing in the kitchen, facing my brother's hostile glare, I knew something had to change. My quiet resolve settled in. I would find a way to reclaim peace for my parents' self, no matter what it took. Eric's family took over the living room like they owned the place. Chloe sprawled on the couch, blasting music through her headphones. Susan organized and reorganized the decorative pillows, her expression one of thinly veiled disdain. Eric leafed through the mail, tossing bills aside with a dismissive flick of the wrist. I busied myself in the kitchen, prepping dinner with my mom. The tension made the air thick, each clatter of a dish feeling like a minor earthquake. Why does it always feel like a takeover? I muttered, slicing a carrot. They're family, my mom replied softly, though her shaky hands betrayed her stress. We'll get through tonight. Dinner started awkwardly as usual. Dad served his famous pot roast, a meal he took pride in, but no sooner had we begun eating than Chloe made a face, pushing her plate away. I don't want this. Can we get a pizza or something? She whined. Chloe, don't be rude, I said, my patience thinning. Susan chimed in with an exaggerated sigh. Oh, let her be. She has a right to her preferences, Claire. Well, she could say it more respectfully, I retorted. Dad worked hard on this meal. Hardly seems like work, Eric muttered, not looking up from his plate. My dad's shoulders slumped. The effort he had put into the meal was undeniable, and the disrespect stung him visibly. Eric, enough, I said, standing up. Show some gratitude. Eric smirked. Why should I thank him for subpar food? Chloe's right. We should just order out. Susan nodded in agreement, amplifying the tension. I agree. It's not fair to force her to eat something she doesn't like. Anger flared in my chest. This was too much. This isn't just about the food, it's about respect. Susan's eyes narrowed. Respect? Funny, Claire. Living off your parents doesn't seem very respectful either. I clenched my teeth, struggling to keep calm. I help them. What are you doing besides taking advantage? Eric slammed his fork down. You think you're so high and mighty. We're family, and family shares. Funny how you're the only one benefiting here. Enough! Dad's voice shook with rare force. This is my house, and Claire is here to help us. If you can't support that, maybe you shouldn't come at all. Silence settled over the table, heavy and awkward. We just want what's best for everyone, Susan said finally, though her tone was anything but conciliatory. Best for you, maybe, I muttered, sitting back down. We finished the meal in strained silence, every bite feeling like a chore. As Eric's family prepared to leave, the usual promises to do better next time dripped with insincerity. As soon as the door closed behind them, I turned to my parents. This has to stop. They can't keep treating us like this. Mom nodded, tears in her eyes. We know. Something has to change, Claire. Dad, his usual warmth dimmed, looked at me with a resolve that mirrored my own. We need a plan. We can't keep living like this. No, we can't, I agreed. There was a fierce determination growing inside me, one that promised things would be different. It was time to take control for all our sakes. The following Sunday, the tension in the house was almost unbearable. I could see it in my parents' eyes. They dreaded these visits as much as I did. When the doorbell rang, my stomach twisted. Here we go, I murmured to myself, opening the door. Eric, Susan, and Chloe sauntered in like they owned the place. Dad made dinner again, I said, more as a warning than a welcome. Great, Chloe groaned. Hope it's better than last time. We gathered around the table. Dad brought out a steaming dish of pasta, but as soon as he set it down, Chloe crossed her arms and scowled. I don't want pasta. I want burgers, she declared, eyes locked on her phone. This is what we're serving tonight, Chloe, I said as calmly as possible. You don't always get what you want. Eric leaned back in his chair, smirking. Claire, you need to stop telling our daughter what to do. She's got her own mind. Her mind? All she does is complain, I shot back. Calm down, everyone, Mom pleaded, looking helpless. Susan took a small bite and then grimaced. Paul, do you ever cook anything edible? Dad's hands shook slightly as he reached for his glass of water. I could feel my anger boiling over. How dare you? Dad's a retired chef. Show some respect, I said sharply. Retired being the key word, Eric added, laughing. At that moment, Dad's face turned beet red. If you don't like the food, you're welcome to leave, he said, a quiver in his voice, but a firmness I'd rarely seen. Susan snorted. Fine, Chloe. Let's go. We'll get takeout. Chloe stood, shoving her chair back with unnecessary force. Good. This place is lame anyway. Stop, I yelled, standing up so fast my chair tipped over. You're not just taking advantage of our hospitality. You're ruining our family. Eric's eyes narrowed. And what are you going to do about it, Claire? I met his gaze, unflinching. I don't know yet, but this stops now. Susan laughed, a cold, mocking sound. Good luck with that. Let's go, Chloe. They marched out, slamming the door behind them. The house fell into silence again, but this time it was laced with a newfound tension. We can't keep living like this, Dad said, sinking into his chair. No, we can't, I agreed. But what can we do? Mom hesitated, but finally spoke up. We're going to transfer the house to you, Claire. Let's look for a smaller place that's just for us. I stared at them, surprised. Are you sure? That's a big step. Dad nodded. We're tired of Eric's demands and Susan's insults. It's time we took control back. My own resolve hardened at that moment. All right, I'll get everything started. We're not doing this alone. We're doing it together. That night, as I lay in bed, the plan started forming in my mind. This wasn't just for me. It was for my parents, and I'd do whatever it took to protect them. It was time to put our plan into action. The following weekend, Eric's family barged in with the usual sense of entitlement. This time, however, the air felt heavier. Everyone sensed that something was about to break. Before we even finished dinner, Chloe threw her fork down, her face scrunched up in disgust. I'm not eating this, she yelled, pushing her plate away and standing up abruptly. Chloe, sit down and eat your meal, I said sternly, my patience wearing thin. No, this is gross. I want pizza, she shot back, crossing her arms defiantly. Susan smirked up at me from her seat. She's right, Claire. Why do you keep forcing her to eat this stuff? Just let her order what she wants. Dad's confidence seemed to falter as Susan's words dug in, his shoulders drooping slightly. Do you know how disrespectful that is? I snapped, glaring at Susan. This isn't a restaurant. Dad worked hard on this meal. Eric, who had been silent until now, suddenly stood up, knocking his chair over. That's enough. We're moving in, Claire. This is our house too, and we're done with these stupid dinners. The room plunged into shocked silence. You can't be serious, I finally said, my voice shaking with fury. This house isn't big enough for all of us. Eric crossed his arms, his face set in a steely glare. We'll make it work. No, I said firmly, you can't just declare it and make it so. And what do you plan to contribute, financially or otherwise? We're family, Susan interjected smoothly, standing up to join Eric's side. We shouldn't have to pay to live here. It's as much ours as yours. That's not happening, I said coldly, feeling my parents' support beside me. You're not moving in and taking over. You can't just decide and invade our home. Eric's eyes flared with anger. Try and stop us, Claire. My mother stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. Eric, we've made a decision. We're transferring this house to Claire. You can't bulldoze over our wishes. Eric's face turned a deep shade of red. What? You can't do that! It's already in the works, Dad added, regaining his composure. We're not allowing this house to fall into your hands. Susan's eyes filled with tears, the manipulative kind I had seen too many times. You can't leave us out in the cold. Where will we go? That's not our problem, Susan. You've overstayed your welcome and shown nothing but disrespect, I said sharply. Chloe glared at me, her face screwed up in anger. This isn't fair. I hate this place. My resolve hardened even more. Maybe it's time you learned what fair really means, I said. As Eric and his family stormed out, slamming the door behind them, a peculiar calm settled over the house. We were finally taking the steps to protect our family and restore peace. But I knew the confrontation wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. We'll start the final arrangements tomorrow, I said to my parents, feeling a newfound strength. We're going to reclaim our home. After that explosive dinner, we worked quickly to put our plan in motion. The next morning, I made calls to an attorney who specialized in property transfers, setting up an appointment for later that day. Sitting in the living room, my parents and I outlined our steps. The gravity of our decision weighed heavily, but it also brought a sense of empowerment. If we don't do this now, they'll tear us apart, I said firmly, meeting my parents' eyes. Dad nodded. They've taken advantage long enough. It's time to protect what's ours. Arriving at the attorney's office, we were greeted by a kindly lawyer named Mr. Harris. He listened intently as we explained our situation, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. Transferring the house to Claire is straightforward, Mr. Harris said, but you'll need to sign these documents, and it might take a few days to finalize. During this time, it's essential not to inform Eric or his family. Mom sighed with relief. We won't tell them a thing. Thank you. Back at home, the sense of urgency propelled us. I began researching smaller homes for my parents, focusing on comfort and accessibility. Each evening, we'd gather around the dining table and review listings, debating pros and cons. I like this one, Mom pointed to a cozy bungalow. It's got everything we need and is near the park. It's perfect, I agreed, smiling. Dad's eyes softened as he looked at the listing. It'll be a fresh start for us. Once the house transfer documents were signed, sealed, and delivered, I worked swiftly to secure the bungalow we had chosen. Everything seemed to fall into place, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of vindication. A few days later, while I was packing up some of their belongings, Eric barged in without knocking. His face was red with fury. I know what you're doing, he spat. You think you can just cut us out? Eric, this isn't your decision to make, I replied, standing my ground. Mom and Dad have made their choice, and you need to respect it. Respect? You think that's what you're showing them? Susan's voice echoed from the hallway as she marched in behind Eric. You're brainwashing them against us. I laughed, though it was humorless. Brainwashing? Look at how you've treated them. This is about protecting them. This isn't over, Eric threatened, grabbing Susan's arm. Mark my words, Claire. They stormed out, but I felt a sense of resolve. Let them try, I thought. The next morning, I sat with my parents as we finalized the moving date. You'll be settled in the new house next week, I said, feeling a wave of relief. Packing day approached, and as we loaded the last box into the moving truck, my parents looked at me with gratitude. Thank you, Claire, Mom said, her voice choked with emotion. We couldn't have done this without you. Dad placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes reflecting both pride and relief. We're finally free. I nodded, feeling the weight lift off our shoulders. This was just the beginning. We had reclaimed our peace, and I was more determined than ever to keep it that way. With everything in place, our new chapter was about to begin, and I was ready for whatever came next. Moving day arrived with a mixture of nervous anticipation and unmistakable relief. As the last box was loaded onto the truck, I caught sight of a moving van turning onto the street. Eric's here, Dad said quietly. I nodded. I'll handle it. Eric burst out of the van with Susan and Chloe trailing behind, looks of confusion quickly turning into rage. What the hell is going on? He demanded, his voice booming. Why is the house empty? I stepped forward, taking a deep breath. The house is ours now. We've moved Mom and Dad to a new place that suits their needs better. You were out of line, and this was the best decision for them. You can't just decide that for us, Susan screeched, her face contorting in anger. We were supposed to move in today. Well, you're not, I said firmly. The house no longer belongs to you, and honestly, it never did. Eric's face turned redder, veins bulging on his neck. This isn't over, Claire. You think you can just kick us out like this? A demolition crew pulled up as I spoke, and suddenly the sound of machinery filled the air. Oh, it is over, I replied, signaling the crew to start. We're downsizing the house. It will be demolished and rebuilt. You have no place here. Susan's face went pale, then twisted in fury. You'll regret this, she spat, tears starting to form. We'll fight this legally. Good luck, I said with a chilling calm. Everything has already been legally transferred. You have no claim. Chloe stood there, stunned into silence for once. She looked up at her parents, confusion and fear mingling in her eyes. What are we going to do? She asked, her voice small. That question hung heavily in the air, unanswered. Eric and Susan's bravado faltered, reality sinking in. They hadn't expected us to fight back, and they certainly hadn't expected to lose. Mom, Dad, I called out, motioning them over. It's time to go to your new home. Mom and Dad walked over, their faces a mixture of sadness and relief. Claire's right, Dad said, his voice steady. This is for the best. Eric made a last-ditch effort, grabbing Dad's arm. You can't leave us like this, Dad. We're family. Dad shook his arm free, looking Eric in the eye. We are family, which is why I hoped you'd understand. We need peace, Eric. We can't have that with you here. Susan sobbed openly now. And Chloe was on the brink of tears. This is our home, she insisted, stamping her foot. Not anymore, I said firmly. Your behavior left us no choice. We turned and walked to the car as the demolition team began its work. The sound of walls coming down filled the air, blocking out any further argument from Eric and his family. As I drove my parents to their new home, a weight lifted from all of us. Reaching the small, cozy bungalow, I helped my parents settle in. There was an undeniable sense of relief as we unloaded the last of their belongings, each item a symbol of a fresh start. Thank you, Claire, Mom said, giving me a hug. This means everything to us. Dad gave a nod of approval, his eyes glistening. You've given us a new life. I smiled, feeling the peace we had fought so hard for settling around us. We had taken a stand, reclaimed our dignity, and protected our family. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we had truly come home. The week following the move was blissfully quiet. My parents settled into their new home, their faces visibly more relaxed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Eric and Susan wouldn't give up easily. One evening, as we were unpacking the last of the boxes, my phone buzzed with a message from Eric. Meet me at the old house tomorrow. We need to talk. The next day, I arrived at the now empty lot. The sight of the demolished house felt both empowering and bittersweet. Eric stood there, looking more disheveled than usual. Susan and Chloe were in the car, their faces a mixture of anger and confusion. What do you want, Eric? I asked, keeping my voice steady. This isn't fair, Claire, he began, his tone more desperate than before. You can't just take everything away from us. I didn't take anything, Eric. You pushed us to this point with your behavior. We needed to protect Mom and Dad. Protect them from what? Us? We're family, Susan shouted from the car, her face contorted with anger. Family doesn't treat each other the way you have, I said coldly. You disrespected and manipulated them. It's over. Eric stepped closer, his voice dropping. You don't understand, Claire. We're in serious financial trouble. We need this house. I felt a brief pang of pity, but quickly suppressed it. You should have thought about that before treating us like doormats. Besides, it's too late. The house is gone, and so is your claim to it. Chloe finally stepped out of the car, tears streaming down her face. Where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere else. That's not my problem. You brought this on yourselves, I said, though it hurt seeing my niece like that. We'll fight this. We'll find a way to get back what's ours, Susan yelled, her voice cracking. Good luck with that, I replied simply, turning to leave. It's done. Back home, I relayed the encounter to my parents. They listened quietly, their faces reflecting a mix of sadness and relief. We did the right thing, Claire, Dad said, though he looked weary. This is their mess to clean up. Absolutely, Mom agreed. We deserve peace, and peace we found. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, Eric's threats dwindled into silence. My parents began to truly enjoy their new home, free from the burden of constant conflict. One afternoon, we sat on the porch, sipping lemonade and listening to the birds. This is nice, Mom said, her voice content. It really is, Dad agreed. We haven't had this kind of tranquility in years. We had heard through the grapevine that Eric, Susan, and Chloe moved in with Susan's parents. The strict and unyielding environment wasn't an easy adjustment for them. Chloe struggled with the discipline she wasn't used to, and Susan's manipulative tactics fell flat with her own parents. I couldn't help but think about the karma we had alluded to. It was beginning to unfold. Even as I thought about them, I felt justified. We had stood up for ourselves and reclaimed our lives. With each passing day, the relief felt more like liberation. All we ever wanted was a happy family, Mom said, taking my hand. And now, we finally got it. I smiled, squeezing her hand back. Yes, we do, and it's going to stay that way. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized that this was just the beginning, for us, and perhaps even for Eric's family, in their own way. A few months passed, and life settled into a steady rhythm. My parents and I thrived in the stress-free environment of their new, cozy bungalow, but the fallout from our decisive actions still echoed. One morning, as I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee, the phone rang. It was Eric. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Claire, he started, his tone surprisingly subdued. We need to talk. What is it, Eric? I asked cautiously. We're struggling, he admitted. Susan's parents aren't exactly welcoming, and Chloe is having a hard time. Can we meet? I thought carefully before agreeing. Fine, let's meet at a cafe downtown at noon. When I arrived, Eric and Susan were sitting at a table, looking more worn than ever. Chloe was absent, likely in school or avoiding the confrontation. Eric spoke first. Look, Claire, we messed up. We've realized that, but we're in a bad spot. We need help. Susan nodded, though her usual haughtiness was noticeably absent. Living with my parents hasn't been easy. They're strict, and it's been hard on Chloe. This whole situation has made us rethink our actions. I leaned back, crossing my arms. It took this long for you to see reason? Eric sighed deeply. Yeah, it did. But we're ready to make things right. We need your forgiveness. I felt a flicker of pity. What exactly do you want from me? We're not asking for money or a place to stay, Susan said quickly. We just need your support to get back on our feet. My initial anger began to soften. Support how? Maybe help us find a place of our own, Eric said. We're job hunting, but it's tough. We just need some guidance. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. Here's the deal. I'll help you find resources and connect you with people who can assist. But you have to stand on your own from here on out. No more handouts. Eric nodded, a spark of hope in his eyes. Thank you, Claire. We appreciate it. Susan murmured her thanks as well, a faint smile forming. Back at home, I shared the conversation with my parents. They listened quietly, absorbing every detail. I hope this is a turning point for them, Dad said after a long pause. But Claire, you've done enough. Don't let them drag you down again. Mom nodded in agreement. They need to learn to stand on their own. Over the next few weeks, I helped Eric and Susan network and apply for housing assistance. They found a modest apartment, and Eric landed a job that instilled a sense of stability. One evening, while sitting on our porch watching the sunset, Dad turned to me. You did the right thing, Claire. You gave them a chance, but you also set clear boundaries. I'm proud of you. Mom squeezed my hand. We all needed this, a fresh start for everyone. As the sky darkened, I realized that true revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about reclaiming our peace and helping others see their faults. We had taken back our lives, and in the process, perhaps set Eric's family on a path to redemption. Here's to new beginnings, I said, lifting my glass. And for the first time in years, our future felt unequivocally hopeful.